Okay, welcome to this meeting of the Environment and Climate Scrutiny Panel. We'll kick off with membership of the panel. I'm Councillor Andrew Cooper, I'm chairing the panel today.
Good afternoon everyone, my name's David Longstaff, I'm a councillor from Armonbury.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Matthew McLaughlin from the Colne Valley Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sulia Richards from the Newsom Ward.
And we've received no apologies for the meeting, so we will carry on unless they've appeared late. So next, minutes of the previous meeting. Is there anything anybody wishes to raise under those, or are we happy to approve those?
I'm happy to approve.
Thank you. Do we have any deputations or petitions? I think I know the answer to this question.
Agree the minutes, please.
Pardon?
Agree the minutes.
We agree the minutes.
You all agree?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so public question time. We've done deputations, no petitions, all fairly quiet. Public question time, no public questions. So straight into highways safety updates. And Liz Cusick and Philip Waddett.
Yeah, Chair, with your permission, I'll give a quick introduction and then pass over to officers to give a presentation.
Right.
Right, John.
And we've just been joined by Councillor John Taylor.
So thanks. So we're here today for an update on highway safety to present progress against our various highway safety targets, and in that sense, the effectiveness of our policy on highway safety. I've not had cabinet responsibility for highways for about a year now, but I'm covering for Councillor Ahmed, who's unavailable today. Really pleased to have had this opportunity to be briefed in detail on progress in highways safety, and also I'm absolutely delighted to have seen so much positive progress has been made. Any death or serious injury is clearly devastating to those involved, and the administration is absolutely committed to continuing our trajectory towards and in line with Vision Zero, which is 0 killed and seriously injured on our roads by 2040, but there's interim targets of a 50% reduction killed and serious injured accidents by 2030 as well. So I'm especially pleased to see, and you will see from the data that Phil will present shortly, the positive progress that has been made against those targets. This data will demonstrate and justify the effectiveness of the intelligence-led resource allocation policy in producing reduction in harm on our roads. So I'd like to thank all the officers for their hard work on this to keep us all safe. I also think another key objective must be to ensure that our young people are educated in road safety, to set them up for safe and healthy lives. So I'm pleased also with the efforts being made in this area. And again, I think Phil will provide some detail on this in his presentation. So I think I'll pass over to Phil now, and then obviously I'm happy to answer any questions from an administration perspective that the committee want to send my way. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. I'll just share the presentation. There we go. Just make sure we can see that. Yep. So as Councillor Cook mentioned, there's an update sort of on the numbers and what the safety team have sort of been up to over the last sort of 12 months throughout 2024. But I want to touch on a little bit on an introduction to Vision Zero, what Vision Zero is, what it means, both in West Yorkshire and in Kirklees, to sort of set the scene for the numbers and for the work that we sort of going to touch on towards the sort of end of the presentation and those numbers in where we've been for the last sort of year or so since we last visited Scrutiny. There's a video I'd like to play as well, just to add a little bit more context to that at the end if that's okay, but I'll shut the presentation and load the video up because it's not quite embedded as well. So Vision Zero is an ambition, and it's a premise that no one should be killed or suffer lifelong injury as a result of a road traffic incident. It understands that people do make mistakes on the road. We're all human. There's humans that drive the vehicles, there's humans that are crossing the roads, there's humans that are interacting, and we all make mistakes. But what it does is it educates those that are on the roads and ensures that there's a shared responsibility for everybody who uses it, who designs it, builds the roads, manages the roads. Within that, the Vision Zero approach uses what's called a safe systems approach, and the ambition, which talks around safe roads, safe behaviours, safe speeds, safe vehicles, and our response to collisions, and how we respond not only as Kirklees but as partners to those collisions on the network. And it recognises that without all of those safe system approaches and behaviours working, that that one part of the system fails, then we need to make sure that all users are still protected by the other four, sort of taking up the ability to sort of influence that outcome if one of those fails. And the ambition there, as Councillor Cook mentioned, is to eliminate road deaths and serious injuries on our network by 2040 and improve road safety using that approach. So a little bit on where West Yorkshire are, because they're slightly ahead of us in terms of our adoption at Kirklees. So West Yorkshire launched their Vision Zero strategy in August 2024. The strategy was produced alongside sort of colleagues across all 5 districts. So we've all inputted into some of the data, some of the information that's in the strategy, and sort of bought into that as a highways authority, and as a council where we've had opportunity to do so. Like I say there, it works on those key themes, which are the safe roads, safe behaviours, safe speeds, safe vehicles and post-collision, but it also has some cross-cutting themes around making sure that the community is involved. We use a data-led approach for the improvements. We use education wherever we can, and it provides justice to those that have sort of unfortunately been injured as a result of these collisions. In Kirklees, we are quite close to launching a Kirklees Strategic Vision Group. Discussions have been had with the potential chair of the group, and we're working through the potential attendees, or the attendees would like to attend the group at that strategic level, across Kirklees teams, services, and also our partners, so the police, fire, ambulance service, and other partners where applicable, where we've already got those ability to do so. The idea of the board that they will share the outcomes and values of Kirklees to ensure that Vision Zero is integrated and that we have a strategy for Vision Zero moving forward. The board will provide the intelligence-led strategic direction, leadership and governance to all Kirklees boards, groups and departments where necessary, and agencies associated with road safety, and drive forward a holistic safe systems approach to achieving that Vision Zero based on all the 5 themes, and recognising that it's fundamental to the environment, social, economic sustainability of the council. A little bit there on this sort of chart. I appreciate it's a little bit small, but certainly on the left hand side is right at the top, sorry, is the West Yorkshire Vision Zero board, which is an established board that's made up of the deputy mayor, senior partners, politicians and third sector attendees, and they sort of inform and promote and encourage the use of the strategy and sort of its use. That's just sort of strategic level. Along the left hand side is the current sort of West Yorkshire arrangement with an executive safe roads steering group, the camera partnership and the Vision Zero communications group, a Vision Zero data group and a delivery group. They're currently made up of sort of all different partners at different levels working towards the Vision Zero ambition at a West Yorkshire level. On the right hand side in Kirklees, you can see there, hopefully on the top is where the new Vision Zero board will sit, feeding hopefully into the West Yorkshire board at that direct level and across to the executive. The current road safety partnership that's attended at the moment by highways and community safety and a number of teams we'd look to rename that the delivery group so we can focus more on putting those interventions in as a result of some of the data-led work and some of that direction from the strategic group. And you can see there that will be made up of a host of internal teams that are currently in, and hopefully bringing them on board. A little bit about the numbers on, and I've chosen to sort of focus on KSIs. If you look throughout Vision Zero and this Vision Zero strategy, the ambition is the reduction of those KSIs, which is the killed and seriously injured on our network. The green is the casualty data, KSI casualty data for each year, 22, 23, and the provisional 24 data. And as Councillor Crook mentioned, there is the Vision Zero ambition and milestones in there. You can see by the orange line, which is the 50% by 2030, right at the end, and there is an interim sort of number there that's within the West Yorkshire strategy that we've sort of shown 25%, starting with the 2022 baseline by 2026, and you can sort of see there from this year we are on trend and under where we need to be towards that 2040 and, well, certainly 2030 and 2040 ambition. To touch a little bit on what that means in terms of user groups for Kirklees, and I think this was sort of brought to the last scrutiny, so I've included this again. Unfortunately, the provisional data is not there for West Yorkshire for 2024, so I've only been able to sort of pull out the available data for West Yorkshire. But as you can see, across all of those, certainly the KSIs are down across some of those at-risk groups, or across all of those at-risk groups, apart from the other vehicles, which is generally, as you can tell by the 22 data, it generally has ebbs and flows, given it's quite a range of other vehicles that are not currently sort of captured in one of those, the groups above. In terms of sort of Vision Zero and a look to Vision Zero, and something that's emerging sort of at West Yorkshire is a look towards some of the behavioural things and the fatal five that the police enforce, which is something I wanted to include this time round, which is a little bit different to what we've had before. The blue line across the top is the number of KSIs that we've had on year. The red line just below it is the percentage of those killed and seriously injured sort of casualties that are, as a result of one of the sort of fatal fives, been contributed towards it. The fatal five being speeding, drink or drugs, distraction, careless and reckless behaviour, and then not wearing a seatbelt. From the data for comparing West Yorkshire to Kirklees, whilst Kirklees is down, there are two main areas in drink and drugs that have remained fairly the same, sort of from 23 into 24, albeit a slight reduction, but closely, and careless, which also has remained the same. So certainly over the next sort of 12 months, there's going to be a piece of work to understand what that looks like and what that means in terms of what some of those behaviours are within that careless and reckless contributory factor, to understand what we could potentially do, whether that's engineering, education, and the likes, or enforcement. In terms of the highway safety for the last sort of, well, for 2024, sort of since the last time we came, we've had 11 completed capital schemes, which has introduced 13 pedestrian crossings improvements, 4 traffic calming schemes, and 7 junction improvements. And when you look at that, we sort of talk around the safe roads and the safe behaviours pillars, and where that sort of feeds into that, and the work that we're doing looks at those figures. We've had 10 traffic management package schemes implemented, and there's 13 currently in design and delivery, sort of at the moment as it stands. Again, under the safe roads arm function of the Vision Zero. The integration of the West Yorkshire Camera Partnership and the new criteria into the team. The first average camera site installed in Dewsbury East, and 13 locations installed and promoted for the new community safety van, which is predominantly speed-based rather than looking at collision data, which is proving a useful tool in the preventative side of Vision Zero, and 45 road safety audits commissioned or completed at various stages in 2024, which is sort of looks at potential upcoming schemes and gives a view on whether or not they're likely to cause us any future sort of issues should those schemes be installed. So it's a look and a preventative approach before those schemes are installed. As Councillor mentioned, the work we're doing in schools continues, and this is a slight change from the full year 2024. This is just purely for the September to December school year, so this term in 2024. We've visited and trained 6,401 school-age pupils from within the road safety team themselves, and it's an increase of 2,966 compared to the previous year. From a bikeability point of view, we've visited around 2,700 pupils who've had bikeability training, whether that's at sort of level 1 through 3, through to extra sessions that are provided by external funding, separate to the bikeability funding for balancing or learn to ride before they even become sort of on the bikeability and take the bikeability course. And in addition, we've provided some additional sort of family cycling and bike mechanic days throughout October just to further encourage and promote the use of cycles in and around schools. And we've got 76 schools signed up to Mode Shift. So Mode Shift is a tool and a program that helps us promote sustainable travel to and from school. The schools work with colleagues within the safety team to look at measures they can implement themselves and get involved in to promote that sustainable and safe travel to school, working towards sort of accreditations. So we've 34 schools that are currently accredited with Mode Shift. Of the 76 that are working with us, you see there that 4 are outstanding, 3 excellent, 6 good, and 13 approved at the moment just to be onboarding for upcoming accreditations. And one of the positives is that 2 tool schools from Kirklees have won a regional awards late in 2024, and one of those schools has been put forward, whilst being named Regional Secondary School of the Year, have been put forward to Regional Secondary School across the whole of England, so nationally, and the awards take place sort of within the next couple of months. To tidy up and share what we do within that last 24 months and add some additionally to that, the highway safety strategy is something that's been in development that talks around our statutory duty to look to those collisions where we have that data and promote measures to not only reduce but prevent those where we can. So the strategy touches on the statutory duty but also acknowledges the Vision Zero aims and ambitions and the Council's shared outcomes, and it is one of several strategies and policies that we're updating alongside others within the safety team so that we can identify and be clear on how we will make decisions and how we're going to best utilise the budgets we've got. It says the document will evolve, so it does say 25, 20, 40, but we will evolve that and we will make changes to it as we sort of embed Vision Zero across Kirklees and within the highway safety team. So it will be a sort of a longer term strategy, but with hopefully updates as we go along, as more data, more information and different approaches become available to the safety team. I think that concludes that part of the thing. I would like to share the video if that's okay, because I think the video just adds that little bit of context into why we do what we do. I can't take credit for the video as such. Leeds Council colleagues found the video as part of their and used it as part of their Vision Zero launch. So I've pinched it from them really. So I will give them the nod because I've not found it myself. With pride. But yeah, I did want to sort of share it if that's feasible. So I'll share that back and get that going. And I'll turn off my mic for that. Should.
So last year, 213 people died on our roads. what do you think would be an acceptable number?
Acceptable.
Yeah, I'll just let it.
So last year, 213 people died on our roads. What do you think would be a more acceptable number?
Acceptable. 70 maybe. Probably 70.
Can you send 70? Actually, this is what 70 people looks like.
It's family.
So now, what do you think would be a more acceptable number?
0. 0.
Yeah, sorry. The Leeds originally found the video, but the video was produced in Australia. Apologies. Yeah, but yeah.
Off. So thank you for that, Philip. We've now go to members' questions, and David indicated in the pre-meeting.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Obviously, I fully support. Who wouldn't support that vision? Few things. I was a bit surprised on page 13 of their report. Legal implications not applicable. I would have thought if we aim to get to Vision Zero, there's going to be loads of legal implications.
I think from the report, I think we probably misread the report in terms of what we wrote in there. I think there probably is some implications that we need to think about. I think when we did the report, we were putting the numbers in with the anticipation and doing the presentation. So in terms of writing it in that sort of sense, putting the numbers in and bringing an update rather than a decision to so we didn't put those legal implications in as such, but there is potential, so obviously legal implications for anything that we do, and we are called often sometimes to present information. So there is some in there. I think it's probably just how we've compiled the report for this, given we were just providing an update rather than a decision. So it's, we probably misinterpret the report writing itself, possibly.
And if I come back to that, because obviously you mentioned the schools, my advice to any new magistrate or judge is to go to a school at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. You see every moving traffic offence under the sun. We've still got 30-mile-an-hour outside some schools. So surely that's an easy hit to reduce the risk, the safety risks outside schools. I'm baffled why we can't make every school in Kirklees a 20-mile-an-hour zone at the right times outside the schools.
Yeah, so a few years ago we did have a speed limit review undertaken. The speed limit review concluded that the majority of our speed limits are fit for purpose, but did highlight some priority schools. We secured funding from West Yorkshire Combined Authority, additional to our normal CRSTS budgets, and we've just had approval last month to proceed with a project that will focus on initially the 38 schools. We're looking to take an approach where we visit the schools and talk to the schools around how they travel to school, what they see as some of the barriers to travelling to school, and using some of that intelligence from the school, from the parents, from the residents, and then adding in an element of the collision data that we've got available and the speed data that we've got available. Once we've got all that data collated, we could then go into procure a consultant to undertake a review outside, an independent review outside all of those 38 schools, and ask them very specific questions around suitability of speed limits and get their feedback on that as a starting point, with the hopes that then once we've got these 38 going, we can then secure funding to visit all of our schools across the district at some point. But the funding at the moment is not available there for us to do that, so we're having to sort of prioritise those schools that were in the initial report as being at risk at the time of the report being produced.
Timescales is the obvious question. If we're serious about this, what's the timescale? Because that did, with the greatest respect, seem a bit years in the future.
Yeah, the initial 38, we have a timescale on that to have those action plans completed and concluded by April 27. Within the action plans, there is budget available to implement a small majority of some of those action plans and some of the measures outside of those action plans with the same April by the end of March 27 target, so that we can monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of those schemes and then use that as learning for the future action plans. So we've got a starting point and a way forward and a 2027, and then from there we can work on the rest.
Can't we get any more budget from the Mayor? The Mayor's driving this for West Yorkshire. It seems a long time to me to wait when we know that these incidents are near misses already. And the enforcement around schools. You said about all those wonderful stories, which I don't dispute, but surely we need a bit more enforcement to make sure it's safe, and particularly for 30 mile an hour, because I'm sure the Chair will ask questions about the difference between 30 and 20 and the impact of accidents on
that. Councillor Crook wants to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, thanks, Councillor Longstaff, for the question. I think it is really important that we ensure children's safety around schools. And I've got young children and a school governor as well, so I'm very familiar with the problem. I would say that the speed limit around schools, particularly in my ward where we've got small hilly roads, isn't really the factor that's most important. It's people's behaviour around parking and safety and just following the rules of the road. And there's an initiative called School Streets where we actually close off the school and make everybody get into the school walk, so there are no vehicles there to endanger the children. I mean, we've tried all sorts of different initiatives to combat people's behaviour. You can get bollards with pictures of children on them, all sorts of things, and then there's complexity around enforcement. I'm sure you're aware, so where there are yellow lines, it's council enforcement. Where there aren't yellow lines, it's possibly police enforcement. If it's an obstruction, it's the police. If there's a contravention of other regulations, it's the police. So there's complexity around enforcement, and what I found at the school where I was a governor is even if we get the police or the council enforcement officers to come in and do like an operation for a day or two, 2 days later it's gone back to the same sort of behaviour. So I would absolutely support a change to 20 miles an hour, particularly around all our primary schools. We do have certain levers as ward councillors, like positioning of SIDS and so on, to try and improve safety around schools. But ultimately, I would like to see us adopting more the school streets policy and preventing any of those contraventions, never mind just the speed limit. So.
People can.
Thanks, Chair. I'll leave it there and we'll share the questions.
Can I come back on some of those points that David made? So I've heard about the 38 schools. You've mentioned those, and that we're going to procure consultants to engage with the schools, to gather information and things. And there's an action plan that will result out of that, which will see implementation of measures for a small majority, I think was the phrase used. What is a small majority out of those 38? Do we have an idea about how many will actually have measures installed? Because a small majority, I mean, in political terms, that can be quite small.
Because of the nature of each school's independent, each school's an individual, and we don't know, so it's very difficult to judge how much the funding that we've got, how far that will stretch. So it really is difficult for us of that 38. But our intention is that we started the building blocks now with this work, and on top of our CRSTS, we're going to go back again to WICA to ask for additional funding as the consultants move forward with the schools. And then beg, steal and borrow any other funding that we can find whether it's active travel funding for implementation. Some of the initiatives may be, as Councillor Crooks said, school streets. Not all roads with schools on them are suitable for school streets because they're on busy main roads, so it'd be difficult to implement those. The problem we've had with school streets, so we got some active travel funding for school streets, but we could not get the buy-in from the schools. So we did 2 trial sites in the end. We started with 5 schools that signed up. We then went through the process with them. 2 of them dropped out. 3 started down the process. We did the first one, and the school loved it, the parents loved it, the residents hated it, but the school were then very open with us because it would be down to them at the end of the day to bring take the traffic management out in the morning and take the traffic management back in, and then manage the school closure on a daily basis. And they've just not got they've just not got the resources. Obviously, from a council point of view, we don't have the resources either to be at every school every morning putting traffic management out, and every afternoon bringing it back in again, and being there for an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening, in the afternoon to monitor it, or because you've still got to move the traffic management to let residents in, to let access for disabled drivers, or a whole raft of other things whilst that school street's implemented. So it's a really difficult sell for us. We don't have a lot of the areas that have got school streets have got camera enforcement, and so they're not managed by anything other than a camera. We don't have the legal powers to monitor moving traffic in that manner, so it would have to physically be constrained for the school streets.
There are councils that do camera enforcement for school streets, though, aren't there?
If they have it, yeah. So some councils have taken the TMA Part 6, yes, and they're using those powers to enforce school streets.
Yeah. The London boroughs and things.
Most of them are London boroughs, yeah. So, but we're hoping that the in-depth work that the consultants are going to do with each school will give us a steer on what's right for that particular school and what's right for that particular. May well be that it's an off-road, it's off-road, that there's a better route, and we can do park and stride, or we can do a whole raft of other things. So to answer the original question, we can't tie it down to how many schools. The pot that we've currently got is going to stretch to, but we will eke out as much and as many as we can.
Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Before I get to my sort of more specific questions, I do have to say that the amount of detail in the report itself is totally inadequate and unacceptable. It amounts to a page and a half on what is a very important, both officially and morally, issue. And the only actual detail that we get to be in the form of a PowerPoint that we received the day before is not good enough. Every bit of information and detail that's come in the presentation should have been in the report so that the public as well as members could see it in advance. So I don't need a comment on that, I just need you to do better next time, please. But my first question, on slide 8, we've got the figure about the current position and trend of KSIs. I know that the graph that I have in my version is not the same as the graph that was up on the screen just then, because on my version it says the current forecast for 24 is 195 rather than 184, which is the figure given in the report. So before I move on, which is the correct figure?
It's the 184, so there's been an update in the data. So the 184 is the provisional data. The original one was forecast on some other bits of data that we had, so we've had a slight update since, so I put the newer numbers in. So the 184 may change slightly, probably not as high as 195. Might be a small change. The thing with the data is, until the police have done everything they can do with the 2024 data in terms of ratifying it, it's still provisional. But the number that we've got, 184, is the number up to the end of December, rather than a slight best guess up to the end of December that we used before using the previous data. So that's why it's a slightly out, it's more up to date, which is a better position for us, really.
Thank you for that. No, and it is better, 11 fewer is no joke. That's people's lives, so fantastic. On the capital schemes and the traffic management, etc., that you talked about on slide 11, I'm just wondering, can we demonstrate a correlation, or better yet, a causation, between areas where we have implemented schemes already and areas that have seen that decline in the number of incidents? can we be sure they're working?
Yeah, so as part of our CRSTS, the conditions of the CRSTS and the funding that we receive from Combined Authority, they challenge us on our interventions and what interventions we're putting in. So we're currently working with them to produce a piece of work that looks at these schemes that have been implemented since the start of CRSTS to quantify what those reductions have been post-scheme implementation. From the initial data, it's very positive. It's only draft at the moment, which is why it's not available quite yet to share, but it is positive. The caveat to that is obviously while we're doing the best we can in highway safety to influence for engineering and and the things that we're putting in on the ground, there is also the other factors, the behavioural factors, things that are sometimes harder. So whilst we're probably working, or it looks a lot better in terms of what we're doing in the safety team, but the numbers are not quite following as well as we are, if that makes sense, because there's other factors leading to those. But once the numbers are available, I'm quite happy to share those and be able to sort of promote the good bit of work we have done for those schemes that have been implemented over the last sort of 2 or 3 years as the sort of 12, 24 month timelines, come into play.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be very useful. I expect that, in fact, I would value that the Vision Zero updates continue to come to this scrutiny panel for the next 15 years, so that we can track the progress and see the actual data once we have it. Third question was about the Kirklees Strategic Vision Zero group, which you say is in progress of being launched. Could you just tell us a bit more about what the governance arrangements are for that group? Is it an internal council group, or is it council and external bodies? What's the membership of it, and is there going to be councillor representation on it?
Yes, and yes. So it's the governance of it internally. We'll have an internal chair, and we've not sort of which portfolio holder is actually going to sit on the board, and where that then where that will then lead to. The governance externally is the Vision Zero board, West Yorkshire Vision Zero board, which the chair of our board will attend, as with all the other meetings that they all feed in.
Who's the chair of our board? So who's the chair of our board?
The proposed chair is Emily Parrish. Emily.
Oh, right.
Harry Harris.
Yeah. Okay.
On head of public health. So what we're trying to do is make sure that it's not highways led, because it's a multidisciplined, and it will have external partners at the right level. So we'll have we have working and operative police officers working on the Kirklees Partnership Delivery Group at the moment that's in operation. But the aim is that there'll be the inspector and all of a sort of a Kirklees representative there at our board. And yes, there will be councillors on there, and we're just working through now with who those councillors are going to be, because the question to the scrutiny panel, if we may, is whether or not the chair of the scrutiny panel or a member of the scrutiny panel would like to sit on that board.
Thank you. Not wishing to answer for the chair or for the panel, but I think it would be valuable to have a scrutiny presence in the process. I'll phrase it that way. My final question was about the new devolution white paper that was presented in December in Parliament. Obviously, it's got a long way to go before it's passed yet, but I know that within there is provision for powers to be devolved around highways and roads and schemes to mayoral and to highways authorities. So I'm just wondering if, given the information that was presented in the white paper, there is anything that is relevant to our ability to enforce and fund Vision Zero.
Get the right one. Not that I'm aware of. I don't think there's a significant focus around road safety in that policy and that approach. But obviously, we'll keep an eye on it as the detail comes through, and we'll respond to anything that might impact on road safety from a devolved position. Yeah.
That's Susie Richards.
Thank you. As I understand, this is sort of a wicker is leading on this strategy, and they launched it in August 2024. Why has it taken us so long to get up and running with it? Because it still seems like we're in the development phase in some respects. And can I also ask about slide 8, because ours was different to the one that you showed. Because on ours, on 2021, the grey column is almost identical to our target for 2024. So it seems like we've had an upward spike that we're working to work downwards from again. Thank you.
I'll cover the graph off to start, if that's all right. I think the graph had the previous Stats 19 data in there. I'd not realised I'd changed it loads, to be honest. So the in 2021, 2022, the council moved towards, not the council, sorry, West Yorkshire moved towards a different way of recording collisions within the police service, and they moved from a system called Stats 19 to Crash. And the Crash database and the way that the Crash looks at those collisions and the severity of those collisions and casualties is more aligned to the NHS sort of severity, severe and serious. Whereas sort of in the Stats 19, it would have probably been a police officer at the time that made that decision based on what they knew at the time. So it does look like there was a spike. There's a spike nationally with sort of police services as they move from Stats 19 to Crash, because the severity, certainly within the serious, where something may have been a slight in the views of a police officer or on the previous sort of Stats 19 data, that's moved into a lower serious in terms of the Crash data. What we don't have is that broken down into lower serious, middle, high serious. We just get that through as selves as serious. So it does look like there was a large spike in serious collisions, but that's predominantly due to the way that the collisions were recorded. So moving forward, is certainly at sort of with the current Crash data we've got nearly 3 years now of full Crash data, and it's certainly at West Yorkshire level, and I'd probably align this a bit closer to West Yorkshire, given the 22.2 baseline as well. West Yorkshire are looking to move away from having this sort of older Stats 19 data on and trying to build up that historical data using the Crash data, which is a bit more current and a bit more accurate. Not saying that we don't look back for a little bit of guidance in some areas, certainly the slights and obviously the fatals, looking back a little bit to those, but certainly within the series, which forms part of the KSI, it's quite difficult to compare the two sets of data. So that's probably just, I'd not appreciated what come before, because I'd sort of like said report, and then we were intending to present this, and I've not appreciated seeing it to notice those two differences. But that's what it is. It seems to be it's the way it's recorded rather than an actual increase and spike in those numbers, which is why if you sort of see now the numbers are sort of on the downward trend from the work that we're doing, and as the reporting sort of settles as well.
Okay.
Thank you for that one.
I was just going to answer the question about why we're so far behind. Well, we're not that far behind. I think we've been working on the West Yorkshire Vision Zero with West Yorkshire. But the West Yorkshire Combined Authority have been given external funding for a specific Vision Zero project officer and strategic lead on Vision Zero. We started working with all of the partners, so they're ahead of the game because they've had external funding that has been for officers to be able to do this and drive it, and they are Vision Zero officers. They're nothing but Vision Zero officers. So it's taken us a while to get our footing, but we're no better or worse off than any of our other neighbours. It's not like we're miles behind the rest of Bradford. We are slightly behind Leeds. Leeds have gone out with their strategy, but the rest of the districts we're not. We're all working together. We're all on the same partnerships. We're all working sort of towards the same vision, the same strategy. But yes, it has taken us a little bit longer to get some traction.
Sorry, can I ask another question? With the statistics, is it possible to know kind of what age groups these accidents are affecting in terms of fatalities and serious injuries? You know, is it younger pedestrians etc. And the other thing was, how many schools have we got in the borough? You say 38 you're looking at, but how many schools in total have we got in the borough that could be affected by Vision Zero and us needing to educate and improve safety around start and end of school days? Thank you.
I don't have the numbers to hand around ages, but I can certainly get that and produce that and look at that in a bit more detail around some of those age groups. The number of schools is 196 schools currently, which is all the way through. Sort of, I think we have around 148 sort of primary, up to primary age, and then the rest are sort of secondary. So our ability to sort of focus predominantly more on the sort of, in terms of the day-to-day work, is in the primary schools. The 38 is made up of from the whole 196, but certainly the mode shift and things like that, and some of the numbers we've talked about is predominantly within those primary schools that we've been working in.
I think it's quite important to note that safety outside schools is good generally. There's a perception of it's not safe because they're all so congested and there's traffic and there's so much happening, there's parking, there's kids running around. But the child pedestrian collisions, the child pedestrian injuries are not occurring outside schools and not at school travel times. It's away from the schools and nearer home and outside of those particular times. So whilst Vision Zero, we're focusing, we've got the two prongs. Vision Zero is a lot about prevention, which is why we're focusing on the schools, because there's a risk. But then we've got the other bit, which we've still got those 8 fatalities to deal with, and the rest of this, the other 190 casualties that have been classed as serious, and where our focus has got to lie as well. But from a Vision Zero point of view and reducing casualties, throwing everything at schools is not going to do that for us. Education-wise, it will help towards it, because the younger we educate them, the better. But our intelligence is telling us that the primary focus has got to be on education on our young drivers, because it's that age group that are injuring themselves, injuring others, and in some cases tragically, and paying the ultimate price for that. So where we're looking at engineering at sites, we're looking at education in various pockets with all the data for the age groups, and we can provide that if you'd like a full breakdown. Send in after the meeting. We can send you a breakdown of the age groups of the casualties. But from a casualty point of view, outside schools is not where the casualties are occurring.
Right. Thank you. Yes, I think in the local news, the young drivers being involved in serious accidents has been highlighted lately, and especially young drivers who are inexperienced and carrying passengers with them. And I think the one I heard recently, the young driver had also taken alcohol and drugs before the fatal accident. So I think, yeah, that could be an area that does need focusing on. Thank you very much for your answer.
So coming back on that, so is there any work going on in terms of sixth form colleges, where you've got 16 to 18-year-olds, some of whom will become drivers or passengers in cars? So is any work going on there, any concerted efforts on awareness?
So during Road Safety Week, we tend to try and focus on those groups in those sixth forms and colleges that we can't always get in sort of throughout the year. We struggle sometimes to be able to get involved in some of these sort of age, schools, given the sort of everything else that's going on in terms of the education and the GCSEs and the learning and everything that's going on. So we try and make a concerted effort to focus predominantly on them schools during Road Safety Week, which is once a year, but where we do have information intelligence where things are starting to happen or may murmur around those, we do, as a partnership, look to go and ask if we can come in and do a day of action with the police, with the fire, with us partners, with ourselves. We have sort of looking at some new initiatives in the background to be able to expand our ability to focus on those age groups all the way from sort of high school year, sort of 11, 12-year-old up to and into sixth form and into colleges, because we realised that whilst we're doing a really loads of work in terms of those numbers in primary school, we do miss out sometimes on those high schools. So we have some initiatives that are currently being developed that will focus on those older age groups and hopefully allow us to sort of get into those age groups with a bit more success.
Okay. Councillor Taylor, do you have a question?
Couple of questions, strokes observations. Firstly, just picking up on the 2021 data that you were talking about, Phil. My recollection is the first part of 2021, we still had the pandemic and lockdowns and all of that going on, so that will have influenced that data as well, because there would have been presumably less traffic on the roads, so it's probably giving a false picture as against a full normal year. Just make that observation. Just on schools, one thing we've done in one of the primary schools in my area is bought some of these child bollards. So we're sort of part funding from the friends of the school and some support from the us councillors as well. And the school put them out on the double yellow lines, in advance of school and at the end of the day to try and do that. So that's something schools could consider. They're not hugely expensive. They're not cheap, but they're not hugely expensive. And they're visually very impactful because it's a picture of a child that you're looking at. Having said that, we're still having problems in that school with parents who can't walk more than 3 inches. And I've been up with the school, at school drop-off time. And it's amazing that you actually get abusive parents who are dropping their little loved one off at that school and they're being abusive to the teacher that's going to be teaching them. Some of it I really just don't understand. But that's a thought for anyone to think about these child-shaped bollards because they're not that expensive and maybe easier to implement than some of the challenges you're saying when the community's not happy about blocking off roads and things. My one question really was around tackling behaviours. And, when we say 50% are down to poor driving, whether it's described as careless or reckless or whatever, however you wish to describe it. And we talk about education. My problem with that is the people who listen to your education are the people who drive responsibly in the first place. And I'm not sure we're really influencing those people who drive and have no consideration for anybody else on the road in the first place. And I don't have an answer to that. I think that's a real challenge because it doesn't matter what you do to the road. It doesn't matter how much education we do. If they have no consideration for anyone else, they're going to drive how they want to drive. Enforcement is part of the solution, I guess, but we don't have much enforcement, either by the police or through speed cameras. One of the hotspots in my ward, you'll be very familiar with, at the Sovereign and the Topish, I believe, we've had 3 crashes in the last week and a half. There were 2 this morning, 2 separate crashes this morning. We tried everything. I mean, goodness knows how many times we've been round the loop around what we can do there. And I just wonder when we're going to get to a position where we go, actually, that's the sort of place we do need a speed camera. Because we have literally tried everything else, haven't we? And how do I get that into some sort of dialogue with highway safety about that particular location? Because it keeps coming back time after time. And as I say, there were 2 crashes this morning there.
We're aware of the crashes. We're just waiting for the information from the police as to the causation factors behind that before we sort of move any further on that. And we were also talking about sort of speed cameras and what next, because we've exhausted everything else up there. And the new community concern sites, we can identify. It's a lot easier that we can identify through the safety camera partnership, for the safety camera partnership, smaller vans to go out and do some enforcement. It doesn't necessarily have to meet the KSI criteria or any collision criteria. We just need to be able to show that the speeds that are being achieved are above enforcement levels, and there is community concern there, and then we can put those forward for the safety camera partnership to go there. On the education side of things, we've re-educated, sort of across West Yorkshire, we've re-educated just shy of 91,000 drivers this financial year that have been caught on speed cameras. So, and there is a suite of national driver offender retraining courses that do tackle part of the most of the fatal 5 instances if they are detected by the police. There is new technology coming on board all the time. There's now they're in their infancy, but there are cameras that claim to be able to tell whether you're wearing your seatbelt and whether or not it can detect you if you're on your mobile phone as you pass it. The police have also got Operation Snap in operation for other people to upload video footage of poor driver behaviour, and we've got there's a 70% of the information that's uploaded onto Operation Snap ends up with some sort of police attention, whether it's a letter warning them that they're misbehaving, or a fine, fixed penalty notice, or a straight to court, you're not doing that again. So we are doing quite a lot around education, but it's not Kirklees. We are part of the broader West Yorkshire, but there is quite a lot of, because we all recognise that key age group, so we have to do something differently. And we're working with Kirklees College as well at the moment on what might work best, and getting some insight from them as to how best to reach the psyche of their young students.
I think in addition to that, from the exec board yesterday, West Yorkshire have now established a comms group. So we've got comms reps from each of the 5 districts working with West Yorkshire on Vision Zero. And it was mentioned yesterday about a radio campaign and how they've improved targeted messages through things like radio campaigns. So I think the reassuring thing from that is that they are prepared to look at different methods of communication to try and get these messages over to maybe some of the groups that you talk about, Councillor Taylor, that maybe either for whatever reason aren't getting these messages directly.
I think it's not so much they're not getting the messages, they're just not in receive mode. They're too arrogant almost to think that it matters or they should concern with it. That's my worry, really.
And I think the work that we're doing with the college and the work that the West Yorkshire Data Group, which Phil sits on, and the West Yorkshire Comms Group that our comms officers sit on how best to reach, what's going to work best to reach sort of the groups that we need to reach. And that's the insight there is going to be invaluable, because that's the only way we're going to make any difference. Because like you say, at the moment you're invincible at that age, but in your head you're invincible, but your body tells you differently. If you hit a tree at high speed, you're not going to survive unscathed.
So thank you. A few things from me. We've got a national charity on road traffic accidents in Huddersfield, Break, and it often occurs to me that they could be a resource for us to use. I'm just wondering what sort of links we've got with them where we could work together on projects.
Break are represented on the Vision Zero board, and they are funded as well. There's a funded post collision officer for Break, so that's funded through West Yorkshire. We don't have them currently on any of our. They were on the when we started the Kirklees Road Safety Partnership a while ago. They were represented on there, but it petered out, and we could never get the representation back. And I think that because the West Yorkshire, they sit on the West Yorkshire board, I think that's where they want to be. That's where they feel they're sitting comfortably. There's no reason we can't ask them again as we sort of launch the Kirklees Vision Zero board, as they are on our doorstep. We can ask the question, but we may or may not get a positive response, but we can try.
That's good to know that they're involved. So, another question. We've recently heard about the Wales 20 mile per hour limit policy, which was in place, and that was, what, a 23% reduction in collisions or casualties as a result of that policy. The Kirklees approach to blanket, if you like, 20 mile per hour limits in residential areas has always been, to my recollection, has been they're not worth doing unless there are measures or enforcement, and that has been the approach. Does the Welsh evidence fly in the face of that? And does the Welsh evidence suggest that there may be a value of some sort in having 20 mile per hour limits in residential areas on a more widespread basis?
My understanding, which may not be correct, is from a public perception point of view, the Wales 20 mile an hour introduction has either been stopped or reversed because of public concerns about it. That doesn't mean to say it's not a satisfactory measure from a road safety perspective. What it does say is it highlights the sensitivity around introducing them and how the public respond to those zones. So I think from a public perception point of view, there's a bit of work that we would need to do there.
And I haven't seen the research that says there's been a 23% reduction. So it's just, I'm not saying it's not there, I'm just saying I haven't read it, so I don't know what the research, I don't know where it's come from and what it's based on. That research is based on, can do an awful lot with you if you want to do with figures.
Yeah,
but it's worth a look at. It's worth a look at. I think what we've just said we don't want to do blanket. Leeds and Bradford, Calderdale as well, have all spent huge amounts of money putting blanket zones in, and we're waiting for the measures. We're waiting for monitoring of an evaluation of what they've achieved by doing that. 20 mile an hour zones to us are a tool in a toolbox. And if 20 is right for that particular area to deal with the problems that we've got in that area, then 20 is what we'll do. But again, for us, without enforcement or being self-enforcing, then you might as well not bother. But because the Safety Camera Partnership have now, the police enforcement through the Safety Camera Partnership for using the mobile units, the new community vans are going into 20s. We've never had the enforcement before. Up to this point, West Yorkshire Police wouldn't enforce in 20s, so which was another reason for no point putting a 20 in if all you're going to do is antagonise people because they're expecting a 20 and we don't actually achieve it because we've got no enforcement. But there is now part of the community concerns vans where they will do enforcement in 20 mile an hour zones, so that's a positive for us. So it's just a tool in our toolbox. We'll use it when we think it's appropriate, in conjunction with obviously discussions with local residents and councillors in those areas. But our focus has got to be in those areas where we're currently looking at casualties. So,
yeah, the evidence is there. You know, just have a look at it and see what you think. But it's quite recent actually. Is the evaluation of the 20 mile per hour limit. I take what you're saying about taking the public with you. I mean, I often wonder about people. Sometimes a small amount of vociferous people leading the agenda for others, and sometimes politicians, I think, have got to be a little braver on occasions, and instead of caving in when a few people, Councillor Taylor, when those things come up. Councillor Taylor, did you want to respond to that?
Thank you. We do have a 20 mile an hour zone in my ward, the whole of Barnsley Road, and that was put in from a road safety point of view, and we fully supported it, didn't we? The feedback we've had locally is actually it's led to some problems as well, because some people do drive at 20 miles an hour. You have people trying to overtake them on the other side of the road, the wrong side of traffic islands, because they're frustrated at how slow the traffic is. And certainly we've had a number of public meetings up in the village. Graham, when he was around, came with me to join those meetings. And we are looking at a review of the 20 mile an hour zone. So that may bring some interesting, feedback directly from here in Kirklees. Certainly the feeling is it's probably too long. Not that it's wrong, It's just it goes on for so long that it's difficult to understand what benefit it's driving. And actually, we have seen, you know, a number of collisions as a result of people trying to get ahead of somebody because they're driving at the 20 mile an hour, and it's, you know, and it is an A road with a high volume of traffic. So there's mixed views on it.
I've just got to add in more general terms that public perception of a 20 mile an hour is that public support for a 20 mile an hour is really, really important. As Liz says, it's just got to be one of the tools in the toolbox. We wouldn't be the first authority, and we probably won't be the last, that for whatever reason puts a 20 mile an hour zone in a location and within a number of years have to take all those physical measures out again because it's felt that public perception is such that it's not what they want, it's not what they want to see, and the negativity around it is greater than the benefits. So it just emphasises the importance of that consultation and taking the public with you. But, you know, we're not averse, as a highway authority, we're not averse to considering it if it's the most appropriate thing for that location.
As you'll know, we've used, I say we, as in Newsham ward councillors, have used our ward budgets and public realm funding and practically anything we can get our hands on really to put road safety measures in our streets, and often against Kirklees policy. Effectively, we've had to find that money because we wouldn't have managed to get the measures in otherwise. I think there is certainly in terms of people's perception of living in a safe area, of living in a place where there isn't speeding traffic, there's a clamour for those sort of measures which are about making their community and their street feel safe, as opposed to something which is based on injury accidents. I mean, there could be road traffic accidents which are not measured, non-injury accidents, which are just lucky, I guess, that nobody was in the way of the vehicles. So I'm just wondering, I'm sort of looking at that really as an approach and thinking, you know, is there a lot more that could be done if funding was available? That's been the obvious answer to that. Is yes, isn't it? The obvious answer, hey, if there was loads of money, we could do lots of things. But I just wonder whether we are in a position where we are having to say no a lot of the time when if there was a little bit more funding available, we could say yes and actually respond to the things which people feel more important in the community for maybe not a lot of money in the scheme of things. Sorry, I'm musing here.
I think the answer to that would be inevitably yes, there is a lot more we could do. But I mean, we were asked about monitoring and evaluation earlier on, and what we know whether we can prove what we use our money on is doing what it needs to do. We're funded solely by CRSTS funding from West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and we have to show a first year rate of return on our collision data. So we have to prove that we are reducing casualties. So I don't think either Phil or I or Mark or Councillor Cook or anybody in this room doesn't want to see a reduction in casualties and people feeling safe and being able to be out and about on the roads. But just because of the levels of funding that we've got and where it's coming from and what we're tasked with doing with that money, we just don't have the funding to be able to move forward. So there's a lot more we could, yes, there is a lot more we could do. We'll take your money every day of the week, and we have done to do, you know, it's not against our policy, it's just against our criteria for prioritising the schemes that we have to work on.
Just quickly coming back on that, I guess. I wonder about just how much funding we could do on an ongoing basis, which might enable us to do some measures. And one of the concerns, I guess, is that having been a councillor who's gone through the process, if you like, of putting streets forward, I don't think we do it too much now because we've been through the process of saying this street is an area which has got concern. We pass it to your good selves. it goes into the matrix, and I don't know if the matrix still exists anymore, because I don't think we've put anything through there in recent years. And the matrix, the matrix, you know, is basically a way of the computer says no. And so I wonder how much officer time goes into basically just saying no and putting us through the matrix.
Yeah, I think at the moment, while we still are, unfortunately, do have collisions on the network, and the way that the funding is received at the moment, we are in that sort of unfortunate position where we have to prioritise, and the way that we can see it at the moment is the way that we're currently working. Certainly at West Yorkshire level, there's a recognition that we've done that, and we're trying that, and we are still moving ahead and we're still reducing. But there is a lot more we can do, and we can look at, when we look at Vision Zero around behaviours, but also preventative, and what preventative measures we can do. So certainly from a data and engineering point of view, discussions are ongoing at West Yorkshire level around upcoming opportunities to use that data better, with potentially different types of criteria added in, to maybe present a semi-preventative / reductive sort of, rather than just the pure reductive at the moment. Obviously, as we work towards 2040 and that 2040 ambition, the need to be more reactive and react to those collisions will lessen, which gives us the opportunity then to look at how we best use that funding for that proactive, preventative approach. So whilst we're sort of doing that with these collisions, the opportunity to be that preventative team that we want to be, and get in there and do everything we want to do to stop them from happening before they've even got to happening, is certainly something that us as a team are sort of looking towards. But I also know at West Yorkshire, sitting on the various groups and having those discussions, that we are looking at what data is out there that can help us with creating some sort of opportunity to look at what a preventative type programme may look like. But it's in its early infancy again, as people are coming more on board with bits of data, and again it's using the right data for the right reasons, and coming up with the right outcomes and the outputs and the right way of prioritising these locations. But it's all conversations that we are having internally at Kirklees, but also at that West Yorkshire level, under, you know, as we reduce and prevent collisions, and then work towards preventing further collisions beyond 2030, 2040. You know, on that ambition journey.
Yeah, I think certainly my inbox has a lot of emails from residents and ward councillors desiring some road safety interventions in their wards, and it's not ideal that in a lot of cases we're able to respond to those positively, and I think. Phil, sorry, he's having a drink. I think on average we deliver about 10 road safety schemes a year. Yeah, 10 to 15. It's not an awful lot. One thing I would say is that in the last couple of years we have tried to divert a bit more of our capital funding into lining work, and we had some success in improving some of the lining across the district. There's a long way to go yet, but we have improved some of the lining, and that is a contributing factor to the road being safer, both in terms of not just perception, but making it easier for drivers and safer for drivers to negotiate junctions and difficult locations. So that's something we have done that I think has been positive. But yeah, we'd love to do more.
Councillor Longstaff.
Yeah, thanks for all that. I think I'll be 87 in 2040, which I hope I'm still here to witter to you guys, but I doubt it. But on a serious point, obviously, if you are in the safety professionals, they always say, look at all the near misses. Eradicate the near misses and you stop that. Now, as the years go on to 2040, you'll get the easy wins, if I dare use that expression. But to get down to Vision Zero, you're going to have to tackle all the toughies. And I know my background says I've got to mention enforcement, but you're going to have to deal with the courts, the judges, the magistrates, the police to prioritise. If we're really serious, it's going to take some tough decisions in the future.
I think probably not in line with our district partners. We use our slight data, and we're now looking at damage only incidents as well, that the police hold damage-only information, and they're now they're now willing to share. So that's, again, with the data group that we've got, the West Yorkshire Data Group, that's information that is starting to play a part in the calculations, negotiations, things like that, because you're right, a damage-only is there but for the grace. Is, you know, it could have easily been similar with the slights. I mean, we've always looked at the slights. Other districts, other locations only look at their KSIs. We add that extra dimension because each one of those slights could have been something very different. If the driver had been if the driver had been doing something slightly different or whatever, it could have been different. So we do use slight collision information when we're doing a casualty analysis now. But the damage only, as that starts to emerge, we will ring the police if we're looking at, if we've got some concerns about a location, we will speak to our partners at the police and sort of just get the damage only information, live information. But that's on a scheme by scheme basis, site specific. So we're looking at data sharing with all the damage only, that's the word I was looking for. So it's difficult for us to be able to respond when residents tell us, well, there was a near miss, because how do we quantify that? What does that mean? What was happening around it? And your perception of what was happening around a near miss and somebody else's, it won't have been your fault, it will have been the other party's fault. The other party will say it was your fault. There's always that. So the police give us that. The police report will give us that. So although police might not have attended, they'll have taken statements from both individuals and come to a conclusion. So that data is being used.
And I guess the other point is, it might be an near miss, but what is the causation? What behind that near miss? Is it something we can respond to? Is there an engineering solution to that? It could be it could be all sorts of factors, and it might be something that influences that we can't control.
Okay, thanks for that. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, any further questions at all? Right, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin mentioned earlier on about getting information in so we can have it in the public domain earlier on time. I do take that point that's been made. But thank you for the presentation, thank you for the information, very much appreciated, and we've all learnt something. Okay, marvellous. Okay, so work programme going forward. Have people had a chance to have a look at that? Oops. Do you want to say something on that, Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I'd just like us to consider an additional item for the work programme, and that's to have a look at winter maintenance, see what the lessons learned from earlier this month are, and perhaps you know what the council could look to do in the future, that perhaps both make sure that it's ready should we have a similar incident again, but also addressing some of the issues that came up. I think all councillors across the chamber were picking up various bits and pieces, weren't we, when we were talking to residents. So I just think it's an area that perhaps we ought to look at. I think that's a fair call. Let's have a look at that, see if we can add it. It's certainly things that I would like to add into that. I'm sure we all would. Okay, so we'll see what we can do. Okay, whether we'll be able to get it in, within the time frame here, I don't know, but let's do our best. Okay, anything else before we close the meeting? Yep. Okay. Thanks for your attendance today.